Hello there. These are my revamps of the 2010 LEGO Hero Factory villains, and today I am going to compare them to the original sets that came out back in 2010. Let's go ahead and start this off with Rotor. Keep in mind that some of the joints being used are old and starting to crack, so if you start sinking, that's why. And let me just stand him up real quick. And here he is next to the original. So, of course, the first very obvious change is mine is completely CCBS. It's got standard points of articulation for CCBS figures, because for whatever reason, all the 2010 villains, with the exception of Explode, don't have posable arms. The original set just kind of has this very weak-looking arm launcher, so I decided to go ahead and give mine kind of like an acid tail. While the original figure looks pretty decent on all fours, when you stand him up, his torso is very much exposed and doesn't look very good, so I just went ahead and knocked mine over. I went and armored up his body as well. And here's a side-by-side of both of them on all fours. I do really like the way this tail turned out. I think it's just a nice, simple design that fits into the animalistic look that the original had pretty well. Unfortunately, I did get mine when it was new, so a lot of the stickers just kind of degraded over time, so I just went and removed them and cleaned off the gunk they left behind. Next up, we have Thunder. And here he is next to the original. So a minor complaint I had about the original was the lack of silver on the legs, because Thunder's supposed to be a silver figure and yet his legs are completely black, so I went and just kind of fixed that. And I decided to add some gunmetal into his color scheme because it's basically just a dark silver and it works for silver characters. I took the 2009 Matanui blade element and just kind of kept that. I went and removed the claw, replacing it with the 2010 bulk hand, just because I think this claw is a bit clunky and I didn't really want to try redesigning it. Instead, I went and turned his primary weapon into more of a sonic boom cannon. Kind of reminiscent of DC's Cyborg. And I wanted to give him something a little more reminiscent of the giant gun he had in the Rise of the Rookies show. And here we have Meltdown. And here he is next to the original. I like the original quite a lot, so I didn't try to change too many aesthetical things about it. I gave him a custom arm design that made the arms really long and skinny, and I think that works well for a kind of pseudo-squid aesthetic that the original had. I also went and took the, I guess, claw element from the original and just duplicated it, adding a small Technic piece to fill in that gap, just so it doesn't look as open. The original had these tubes attached to these buckets, but unfortunately the arm design that I came up with, the tubes would just be too small, so I went and just kind of cut those out. I'm a little disappointed that that was the case. And here we have Explode. And here he is next to the original. So the first noticeable thing is that mine is way bigger than the original, because I wanted to give him more of a mob leader kind of aesthetic, since that's kind of the role that he played in the Rise of the Rookies show. I removed the dark red from the set because it was really just one piece and just replaced it with bright red. I also thought posability would be pretty important. He's got opposable fingers and a total uniter torso, so he's got waist articulation as well. I decided to give him a second axe because he's got some built-in missile launchers. And his head is actually a solid yellow bootleg head, which I think gives him a really nice look, and I think he's the only one of my revamps that use a bootleg piece. And the reason I used it is because a regular socket piece would just kind of look dead inside, but the head itself has like this mouth molded into it that doesn't look very good with Explode's helmet in particular. So I think the solid yellow head just turned out looking pretty good for the figure. Next up we have Rotor. And here he is next to the original. So mine has a completely custom torso, and I really like the way that these feet turned out as body armor as well as just a connector for the arms, and I really like the Poe Dameron printed armor pieces that I used for the legs. The weapons have been swapped out with these wrist-mounted blasters instead of the regular Zamisphere shooter and the gas gun. The legs also have a custom design, but these pistons are not actually there for stability, they're there just to add more bulk. Really like the way the hands turned out. They have completely posable fingers, but it's a pretty simple design that works for Rotor's kind of idiot character. So a problem I had with the original, and this just goes for pretty much every Bionicle Titan-esque build, or just how messy the limbs can end up. Like, I'm not a big fan of how many colors were kind of forced in there. So I went and slimmed down the legs as well as slimming down the feet. as well as swapping out his tiny weapon arms for actual arms. And here we have the big, the bad Von Nebula. And here he is next to the original. Something immediately noticeable is that he has the hero chestplate with the hero core, and I have that because he's a rogue hero, so it felt like it just made sense. I decided to go ahead and add a lot of blue to the figure just because I feel like it both meshes very well with some of the pre-existing pieces. And I wouldn't get rid of a lot of the light gray Technic garbage that the original had. Unfortunately, gray still exists in the hips and the feet, but I think I did a pretty good job of just keeping the color scheme consistent. The original staff had this little spinning function with these blades, which I decided to carry over to mine, but I made the blades a little shorter, and I think that light blue makes it a lot more eye-popping. I went and gave him posable fingers, just using one of those Invasion from Below beast feet, and I like the way the thumb turned out. It gives just a little extra speck of blue. I'm just really happy with the way this one turned out. This actually used to be the most popular mock on the Hero Factory subreddit for quite a while, but it was overtaken like a year ago. And finally, we have the somewhat obscure character, Vapor. And here he is, right next to his original counterpart. So with the weapons, I took this scoped element and decided to give him a kind of scoped rifle. And then with his other weapon, since it's just kind of covered in blades, I decided to make something fairly reminiscent of the original Core Hunter weapon. Something else I really wanted to keep in were the exclusive blue Rotor pieces. And I went and added the Xamasphere launchers in orange as a little bit of extra armor, and I think that little extra orange really makes it pop and stand in a lot more. Makes them look a lot more distinct. And those are my 2010 villains from the LEGO Hero Factory wave. Stay tuned for next time when I cover my 2.0 heroes.